Maybe if you spent less time fussing over your little flower projects and more time being a real wife, I wouldn't have to explain everything twice. Brandon's words sliced through the warm Nashville afternoon so sharply it felt like the whole backyard flinched. For a second, even the laughter and casual chatter seemed to thin out, like the air itself was deciding whether it should keep moving. I stood there with a platter of grilled vegetables balanced in my hands, heat rising off the food, smoke drifting in lazy ribbons from the charcoal grill, and suddenly the smell that had seemed inviting 5 minutes ago turned my stomach. Every pair of eyes in his family snapped toward me, not with concern, not with outrage, but with that familiar attention people give to a moment they know they're going to talk about later. Like I was the main act. My name is Madison, I'm 28, and until that moment at my in-laws' annual summer barbecue, I had spent 3 years convincing myself that the man I married was still somewhere inside the man standing in front of me. That if I was patient enough, careful enough, agreeable enough, the sharp edges would soften again. That the version of Brandon who used to hold my face in his hands and tell me I was his best decision would eventually come back. But watching him smirk while his relatives shifted in their lawn chairs, half amused and half uncomfortable, something inside me finally cracked in a way I could not glue back together. I was just asking if you wanted me to grab you another drink, I said, quietly, because my body had learned that volume only made him sharper. My voice stayed steady, but the platter trembled a little in my hands, the way your hands shake when you're trying to pretend you're not hurt. Brandon laughed, and it wasn't a real laugh. It was the kind that invited an audience. The kind that told everyone, hey, you can laugh too, it's safe, she won't bite. See what I mean, he said, raising his voice just enough. She doesn't even listen. I said I wanted a beer 10 minutes ago. A beer, Madison. Not whatever diet thing you keep pushing on everybody. His mother, Constance, let out a small chuckle under the patio umbrella, like she didn't want to commit to laughing too hard but she also didn't want Brandon to feel unsupported. His father, Gregory, shook his head the way people do when they want you to know they're disappointed without actually saying it. Around the yard, cousins and aunts and uncles did what they always did. They looked away. They stared at their plates. They pretended to be very fascinated by the potato salad or the cooler full of drinks. A couple of them smiled thinly, like this was normal, like this was just Brandon being Brandon, and I was supposed to play my part so the day could keep moving. I had become the entertainment, and no one was going to save me from it. That was when I noticed him. Ethan, Brandon's cousin from Atlanta. I'd met him twice at family gatherings, just enough to recognize his face and remember that he wasn't the loud type. He had been standing near the fence with his arms crossed, watching the scene unfold with an expression I couldn't name at first. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't looking down. He wasn't pretending not to hear. He was looking straight at Brandon. Brandon, Ethan said, calm but firm, and his voice cut through the awkwardness like a clean blade. He pushed away from the fence and walked toward us. That's enough. She asked you a simple question. There's no reason to talk to her like that. Brandon's smugness flickered. Not gone, just irritated now, like someone had stepped on his toe and expected an apology. Stay out of it, Ethan, he snapped. This is between me and my wife. Then maybe treat her like she's your wife, Ethan said, stopping a few feet away, jaw tight, eyes steady, and not someone you hired to fetch things. The backyard went quiet in a different way this time. Not the comfortable quiet of people eating. The tense quiet that comes right before a storm breaks. Even the cicadas in the trees felt like they paused, like they were waiting to see who would be brave enough to keep talking. Brandon scoffed, but it didn't land the way he wanted. Oh, come on. It's a joke. Ethan didn't move. If you don't appreciate her, let her go. I'd die for a woman like her. I felt my face heat up, and it wasn't embarrassment this time. It was something warmer, almost shocking in its unfamiliarity. Recognition. Like someone had finally said out loud what I had been trying not to admit to myself for a long time. Brandon sputtered, truly caught off guard now. What did you just say to me? You heard me, Ethan replied, still calm, but there was steel under it. His eyes shifted to me for the first time, and the look on his face made my breath catch. It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't performance. It was concern. Real, undiluted concern. I set the platter down on the nearest table because my hands were shaking, but not the way they had been a minute ago. The shaking now felt like my body trying to decide whether it was allowed to stop pretending. Because I wasn't just standing there as a wife being embarrassed at a barbecue. I was standing there as a woman carrying a secret that had been crushing my ribs for 3 months. Brandon's affair. The messages I'd found when he left his phone on the counter while he showered. The late nights that were always work emergencies. The perfume that wasn't mine. The way he'd started guarding his phone like it held his pulse. The way he'd come home with the casual confidence of someone who believed he could do anything and still be forgiven. I had been holding it all in, hoping it would disappear, hoping he would stop, hoping he would come back to me like a man waking up from a bad dream. But watching Brandon's face twist with indignation while Ethan defended me in front of everyone, I realized something inside me had shifted. I was done hoping. "Madison," Brandon said sharply, voice turning commanding, like he could still steer this whole moment back into his control. "Go inside and get me that beer. We'll talk about this later." Later. That was always his favorite solution. Push it away. Handle it behind closed doors. Make me feel like I was dramatic for having feelings in public. Make me swallow it so everyone could keep pretending we were fine. I looked at Ethan, then back at Brandon, and then at the faces of all these people who had watched my husband humiliate me without saying a word. And something in me, quiet but unbreakable, finally rose to the surface. "No," I said softly. Brandon blinked. "Excuse me?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shake. I just repeated it, and this time it came out stronger. "No. I'm not going inside. And we're not talking about this later." The silence that followed felt like the exact second before lightning hits. And standing there, with smoke in the air and everyone watching and my heart beating steady for the first time in a long time, I knew with absolute certainty that everything was about to change. Looking back, I can trace the slow death of my marriage to 1,000 tiny moments I kept excusing. Not one dramatic blow, not one obvious betrayal at first, just a steady drip that eventually hollows stone. The way Brandon stopped asking about my day, like my life outside of him was background noise. The way distance grew between us at night, inch by inch, until we were sleeping like polite strangers sharing a mattress. The way his tone shifted whenever I talked about my work at Brightville Landscape Design, the job I had built with my own hands, the job I was proud of, the job that made me feel like I had a place in the world that didn't depend on anyone's approval. I met Brandon when I was 24. I was fresh out of a long relationship that ended ugly, the kind that leaves you craving stability the way a drowning person craves air. Brandon felt like air at first. He was charming, attentive, intense in a way that felt like devotion. He brought flowers for no reason. He remembered tiny details I mentioned once, like my favorite tea, the way I liked my pillow flipped to the cool side, the fact that I hated driving on the interstate at night. He looked at me like I was the most fascinating person in any room. We got married after 18 months. My mother warned me it was fast. She said love can be loud in the beginning, but you don't really know a man until you see what he does when the shine wears off. I told her she was being cynical. I told her she didn't understand. I told her Brandon made me feel chosen. I didn't realize at the time that his intensity had an expiration date. The first year was good. We moved into a small house on the east side of Nashville. I threw myself into making it a home because that's what I thought being a wife meant. Brandon worked as a regional sales manager for an agricultural equipment company, long hours, some travel. I filled the empty evenings with my own projects, designing outdoor spaces for clients who trusted my vision, creating something living out of dirt and dead grass and bare patios. It made me happy. It made me feel useful in a way that was mine. By the second year, something shifted. Brandon started getting irritable when I talked about work. He'd call it cute. He'd say my job wasn't a real job, just playing with plants. At first, I laughed it off because the words were wrapped in a smile, and I didn't want to be the wife who couldn't take a joke. But then I noticed what he never did. He never asked follow-up questions. He never wanted to see pictures of finished installations. He never celebrated my wins. It was like he wanted my world to stay small enough that his would always feel bigger. When I landed the Henderson account, a massive residential redesign that took 6 months and earned me a promotion, I came home vibrating with excitement. The client's feedback had been glowing, the kind of praise you replay in your mind when you're exhausted and wonder if you're good enough. Brandon was in the kitchen scrolling on his phone. "I got it," I said, breathless. "The Henderson project. They approved the full redesign, and my boss said if this goes well, I'm next for lead designer." He barely looked up. "That's great, babe," he said flatly. "So, what's for dinner?" I remember standing there with my keys still in my hand, that excitement collapsing inside my chest like a balloon with a slow leak. I should have said something then. I should have told him that indifference can hurt more than anger, that I needed him to care about things that mattered to me. Instead, I made pasta and told myself he was tired. That became the story I told myself for everything. He's tired. He's stressed. Work is hard. He doesn't mean it. He loves me, he just doesn't show it right. The affair started sometime in the second half of year 2. I didn't have proof at first. I had that gut feeling women learn to distrust because it makes other people uncomfortable. Brandon started working late more often. He started taking calls in the garage. He started angling his phone away from me when notifications popped up. He'd smile at a message, then lock the screen when I walked into the room, like he was snapping a trap shut. I tried to bring it up carefully once, because I didn't want him to accuse me of being paranoid. "Is everything okay at work?" I asked. "You seem stressed lately." He kissed my forehead like I was a child. "Everything's fine," he said. "Just a lot going on. Don't worry about it." So I didn't worry about it, not out loud anyway. I buried it deep enough that I could function, smile at dinners, laugh at family gatherings, pretend my marriage wasn't slowly bleeding out. Then 3 months ago, everything changed. Brandon left his phone on the bathroom counter while he showered. It buzzed with a notification. I glanced without thinking, expecting something boring, a work email, a group chat. Instead, I saw a name I didn't recognize. Vanessa. The message said, "Last night was incredible. Can't wait to see you again." My hands went cold so fast it felt like the blood drained out of my fingers. I picked up the phone, heart pounding hard enough that my ears started ringing, and I scrolled. Dozens of messages. Weeks. Plans. Hotel names. Pet names. Photos I wish I could erase from my brain. Inside jokes that made my stomach heave because they belonged to a version of Brandon I didn't have access to anymore, a version that was soft and attentive and excited, the version he used to be with me. I put the phone back exactly where I found it because something in me went numb, like my mind was trying to protect itself by shutting down. I walked out of the bathroom on legs that didn't feel like they belonged to me. When Brandon came out of the shower, toweling his hair, wearing that casual confidence he always had, I told him I was going to run errands. I drove to a park 3 minutes from our house. I sat in my car and cried until I couldn't breathe, until my chest hurt, until my throat felt raw. Then I wiped my face, started the engine, and drove home. And I didn't say a word. For 3 months, I lived with that secret like a stone in my stomach. I watched him lie to my face with practiced ease. I watched him kiss me goodbye in the morning like he wasn't destroying me behind the scenes. I started studying patterns, dates he claimed were travel. Receipts, credit card statements he didn't know I could access. I built a silent case while serving him breakfast and asking about his day like nothing had changed. People might wonder why I didn't leave immediately. The truth is complicated. Part of me was in shock. Part of me was terrified of what my life would look like without him. And part of me, the part one I'm least proud of, kept hoping he would stop. That he would choose me again. That the man I married would come back. Standing in that backyard now, hearing him order me around like I was hired help, watching his family avert their eyes, I finally understood something I had been refusing to accept. That man was never coming back. Maybe he never existed at all. I felt Ethan's gaze find mine again across the quiet yard, and the weight of a truth I'd been avoiding settled into my bones. Ethan knew something. The way he had spoken up, the edge in his voice, the protective stance he kept taking near me. This wasn't just a cousin defending family values. This was personal. Brandon was still sputtering, face red with anger and embarrassment. "Who do you think you are, Ethan?" he snapped. "Coming into my parents' house and disrespecting me like that?" "I think I'm someone who was raised to treat women with basic decency," Ethan replied evenly. "Something you seem to have forgotten." People started shifting. Gregory set his beer down, watching his son like he was seeing him clearly for the first time. Constance kept glancing between them like she was waiting for someone else to tell her what to feel. Brandon's sister Mallory scooped up her kids and started herding them toward the house, already trying to protect them from what she knew was about to erupt. "This is ridiculous," Brandon said, then turned to me with a voice that tried to sound reasonable and somehow came out like a threat. "Madison, let's go home. We're leaving." I didn't move. His jaw tightened. "Madison. Sharper now." I said, "We're leaving." "I heard you," I said, surprised by how steady my voice was. "I'm not ready to leave." This was new territory. In 3 years, I had never openly defied him in front of his family. I had always smoothed things over, made excuses, preserved his image even while he shredded mine in private. "Fine," he hissed through his teeth. "Stay here and embarrass yourself. I'll be in the car." He stalked toward the side gate that led to the driveway, not bothering to say goodbye to anyone. The silence he left behind was suffocating. I could feel every person waiting for me to follow him, to apologize, to restore the comfortable fiction that everything was normal. But I was so tired of carrying that weight. "I'm sorry," Constance said finally, voice thin. "I don't know what's gotten into him today." I looked at her, at this woman who had watched her son belittle me again and again without ever saying a word in my defense, and something close to pity rose up in my chest. "Yes, you do," I said quietly. "All of you do." No one responded. The accusation hung there, heavy and undeniable. Ethan stepped closer, his presence warm and solid beside me. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" he asked softly. "Privately?" I nodded, grateful for a reason to step away from the eyes, the whispers, the judgment. We walked toward the far corner of the yard, past flower beds Constance paid professionals to maintain, until we were far enough away that the voices at the patio blurred into background noise. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, like he was bracing himself. "I need to tell you something," he said. "And I don't know how to say it without making things worse." I let out a bitter laugh that surprised me with how dry it sounded. "I don't think things can get much worse right now." He looked at me, expression troubled. "Brandon and I aren't close," he began. "You probably noticed. We grew up on opposite ends of the family, saw each other maybe once a year. But family talks. Things get around." My heart started racing, because I could feel what was coming before he even said it. "A few months ago," Ethan continued, "I was at a work conference in Dallas. Brandon was there too, same hotel, different event. I ran into him in the lobby." He paused, jaw tightening like it physically hurt. "He was with a woman. Not you." And they weren't exactly being discreet. Even though I already knew, the confirmation hit like a punch. Hearing it from someone else made it real in a different way, like the last excuse in my head just burned to ash. "I'm sorry," Ethan said quietly. "I should have said something sooner. I didn't know if it was my place. But after watching him talk to you like that today, I couldn't stay quiet." Tears pricked at my eyes. I refused to let them fall. "Not here. Not yet. Her name is Vanessa," I said flatly. "I found the messages 3 months ago. I know everything." Ethan's eyes widened. "You knew and you stayed." "I stayed because I was scared," I admitted, and the words cost me something. "I stayed because I thought maybe if I was patient enough, good enough, he'd change. I stayed because leaving felt like failing." "It's not failing," Ethan said firmly. "It's surviving." I looked at him then, really looked. The concern in his eyes was steady. His body language was careful, supportive without crowding me. And the simple fact that he had been the only one to speak up for me all afternoon hit me like a wave. This man I barely knew had shown me more respect in 10 minutes than my husband had shown me in the last year. Something shifted inside me. Not a decision exactly. More like fog clearing. Like the road was there the whole time, I just hadn't wanted to see it. From the driveway, Brandon's car horn blared, impatient and entitled. Ethan glanced that direction, then back at me. He's waiting. Let him wait, I said, and the words came out sharper than I expected, like they had been waiting inside me for years. The horn blared again, longer this time, sharp and demanding, like Brandon believed sound alone could still control me. I could picture him in the driver's seat, jaw clenched, fingers tight around the steering wheel, convinced I would come running the moment he summoned me. That was how it had always worked. He demanded, I complied. He raised his voice, I lowered mine. The dance was so familiar I hadn't even noticed we were doing it anymore. But something inside me had shifted, and I could feel it settling into place, solid and immovable. You should probably go back to the party, I said quietly to Ethan. I don't want to cause more problems for you with your family. He shook his head without hesitation. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about you. There was no drama in his voice, no performance. Just concern. And that made my chest tighten in a way I wasn't prepared for. What are you going to do? He asked. It was such a simple question, and yet it felt impossibly large. What was I going to do about Brandon sitting in the car, furious and humiliated? What was I going to do about a marriage that suddenly felt like a stranger's life I had wandered into by accident? What was I going to do about the version of myself that had spent 3 years shrinking to keep the peace? I don't know yet, I admitted. But I'm not going to that car. Not right now. The horn sounded a third time, followed by the slam of a car door. Gravel crunched under heavy footsteps. Brandon appeared around the side of the house, his face dark with fury, eyes already locked on me. What the hell, Madison, he snapped. I've been waiting 15 minutes. We're leaving. Now. No, I said. The word came out calm, almost detached, and the sound of it surprised even me. Brandon stopped short. Excuse me? I'm not leaving with you right now, I said, meeting his gaze. I need some time to think. Think about what? He threw his hands up like this was absurd. You're my wife. We came together. We leave together. That's how this works. I felt Ethan shift beside me, stepping just slightly closer, positioning himself in a way that was subtle but unmistakably protective. Brandon noticed immediately. Oh, I see, Brandon sneered, eyes flicking between us. You've been talking to him, haven't you? Filling your head with garbage. What did he tell you? Nothing I didn't already know, I replied. Something flickered across Brandon's face. Fear. Just for a second. Then it vanished behind irritation. I don't know what you think you know, he said, voice tight. But you're being ridiculous. You're embarrassing me in front of my entire family. Good, I said quietly. Maybe they should finally see who you really are. His face went from red to nearly purple. Who I really am, he barked. I'm the one who works 60 hours a week to support us. I pay the mortgage. I put up with your obsession with plants and dirt while you play at having a career. And this is the thanks I get. The old version of me would have folded right there. She would have felt the familiar shame crawl up her spine, would have wondered if she was being unfair, would have apologized just to make it stop. But I wasn't her anymore. My obsession with plants and dirt pays for the cars in our driveway, I said steadily. My career helped with the down payment on that house. And if you were really putting up with me, you wouldn't have been so comfortable finding comfort somewhere else. The color drained from his face. What are you talking about? He demanded. Vanessa, I said. The name hung between us like a dropped plate. The woman you've been sleeping with for the past 8 months, I continued. The one you meet in hotels during your business trips. The one who sends you photos that would make your mother faint. Brandon's mouth opened, then closed. No sound came out. Behind him, I saw Constance step closer to the patio, pale now, close enough to hear every word. I found the messages 3 months ago, I said, my voice growing stronger with every sentence. I know about Dallas. Memphis. The apartment downtown you visit every Thursday when you say you're working late. Some of it was inference, patterns I had pieced together. But his face told me I was close enough to the truth to shatter the rest of his denial. Madison, he said quickly, desperation creeping into his tone. You don't understand. It wasn't serious. It didn't mean anything. A mistake that lasted 8 months, I said. A mistake you kept making while you came home and criticized everything I did. While you made me feel like I was the problem in our marriage. I can explain, he said. I don't want your explanations. The tears came then, but they didn't break me. They felt like release. I want you to leave me alone, I said. Tonight. I need space. He looked around, realizing too late how many people were listening. His control was slipping, and he knew it. Fine, he said finally, brittle. Take your time. Think. But this isn't over. We'll talk, I said. Not tonight. He stood there another moment, pride and panic warring across his face, then turned and walked back toward the driveway. The engine started. Gravel crunched. And he was gone. The quiet afterward felt unreal. My legs suddenly went weak and I reached for the fence, gripping it until the world steadied. Are you okay? Ethan asked gently. No, I said honestly. But I think I'm going to be. The family slowly retreated, conversations restarting in hushed, uncomfortable tones like nothing monumental had just happened. Constance disappeared into the house. Gregory followed her without looking back. Ethan stayed. Do you have somewhere you can go tonight? He asked. My friend Jasmine lives about 20 minutes away, I said after a moment. That's good, he said. You shouldn't be alone. We stood there a little longer, the late afternoon light fading, the weight of everything settling in. Why did you speak up? I asked quietly. No one else ever does. He exhaled slowly. Because I've been there. With someone who made me feel small, corrected everything about me until I didn't recognize myself anymore. And I promised myself I'd never watch it happen to someone else without saying something. When he offered to drive me to Jasmine's, I didn't argue. I didn't have the energy. As we walked to his car, I could feel eyes on us from the house. Let them look. Let them whisper. Inside the car, the hum of the air conditioning felt grounding. For the first time all day, my breathing slowed. Can I ask you something? I said. Anything. When you said you'd die for a woman like me, did you mean it? Or were you just trying to provoke him? He was quiet for a few seconds. I meant it. Not romantically. Just, no one deserves to be treated the way he treated you. Something warm settled in my chest. At Jasmine's door, he handed me his number. Be careful. He said. People like him don't handle losing control well. That warning followed me inside. Jasmine didn't ask questions. She hugged me, poured wine, and listened as I finally told the truth out loud. And that night, lying awake in a room that wasn't mine, staring at an unfamiliar ceiling, I felt it clearly. The marriage wasn't broken. It had been a cage. I woke the next morning with a strange clarity humming beneath the exhaustion. Not relief. Not peace. Just a steady awareness that something irreversible had happened, and there was no pretending my way back into the old life. Jasmine was already awake, coffee brewing, phone pressed to her ear as she paced her small kitchen. She glanced at me mid-sentence and lifted a thumb. Yes, today if possible, she said crisply. It's urgent. 2 o'clock works. Thank you. She hung up and slid a mug toward me like she'd been doing this for years. You have an appointment with Diane Hawthorne this afternoon. Best divorce attorney I know. Especially when money gets complicated. The word divorce landed heavier than I expected. Not because I didn't want it, but because saying it out loud made everything real. Thank you, I said quietly. I don't know how to do this without you. You are doing it, she replied. I'm just standing next to you. My phone buzzed on the counter. Brandon. We need to talk. Come home. Another buzz. I know I messed up. I can explain everything. Then another. Madison, answer me. Then the one that made my stomach drop. If you won't come home, I'll come find you. Jasmine watched my face change and reached for the phone. She read the messages slowly, jaw tightening. That's not remorse, she said flatly. That's control. He doesn't know I'm here, I said, though I wasn't sure how much comfort that should give me. Then we don't stay here, she said immediately. You're coming with me to the office, and then we go straight to that appointment. If he shows up, he finds nothing. Part of me bristled at the idea of hiding. But another part, the part that was learning to be smarter instead of braver, understood this wasn't about pride. It was about safety. We left through the back door. At Jasmine's office, I sat at a spare desk scrolling through bank statements, emails, tax documents. I made notes. Dates. Screenshots. I wrote everything down because Diane had said documentation turns stories into facts. And facts win. The more I looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't just an affair. It was a pattern. Emotional control. Financial maneuvering. Isolation disguised as concern. At exactly 2 o'clock, we walked into Diane Hawthorne's office downtown. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, composed in a way that made me feel steadier just sitting across from her. Tell me everything, she said. Start wherever you need to. So I did. The barbecue. The humiliation. The affair. Ethan's warning. The threatening texts. The finances. I didn't minimize. I didn't soften. I told the truth the way it had actually happened. Diane listened without interrupting, her pen moving steadily. When I finished, she leaned back. Do you have access to your financial records? Some, I said. My personal accounts are separate. She nodded. Good. That was smart. Her voice turned precise. We freeze joint accounts immediately. We gather every document you can access. And we document everything. Texts. Threats. Evidence of infidelity. If money's been moved, we'll find it. 2 weeks later, we did. Brandon hadn't just been planning something. He'd already done it. He had accessed my investment account, the one my grandmother left me, using forged paperwork. Slowly transferring money over months. Nearly $40,000 gone. But the worst part wasn't the amount. It was where it went. The account he'd been funneling my money into wasn't just his. It was joint. With Vanessa. They were building a future together with my inheritance. I sat in Diane's office staring at the documents, feeling something colder than anger settle into my bones. This is fraud, Diane said. Criminal fraud. What are my options? I asked. We pursue this civilly and we involve law enforcement. Do it, I said without hesitation. Brandon unraveled quickly after that. Calls. Voicemails. Pleading that turned into threats. When he showed up at Jasmine's demanding to see me, she called the police. Diane filed for a restraining order the same day. Through all of it, Ethan checked in. Messages. Calls. Steady support. Never pushing. Never. Inserting himself where he didn't belong. You're handling this with incredible strength, he said one night. I don't feel strong, I admitted. I feel angry. And tired. And stupid for staying. You're not stupid, he said gently. You're awake now. The courtroom 3 weeks later felt surreal. Diane dismantled Brandon's case piece by piece. The forged documents. The transfers. The joint account. The timeline. By the time she finished, even Brandon's lawyer looked defeated. The judge ordered full restitution, stripped Brandon of any claim to my house or assets, and referred the case for criminal prosecution. As the ruling was read, I watched Brandon's face collapse. The arrogance gone. The control gone. Outside the courtroom, he hissed, "This isn't over." I met his eyes calmly. "If you appeal, everything goes public. Choose carefully." He went pale. I walked away. Outside the courthouse, the Nashville sun felt warmer than it ever had before. Not because the day was special, but because for the first time in years, I wasn't shrinking under someone else's shadow. Jasmine was waiting on the steps. The moment she saw my face, she let out a laugh that sounded like relief and pulled me into a tight hug. "It's over," she said. "You did it." "It's over," I repeated, and this time I believed it. That evening, I sat on the porch of my grandmother's house, my house, watching the sky soften into gold and amber. The air smelled like honeysuckle and cut grass, The same scent I remembered from summers when I was a kid, lying on the steps and imagining a future that felt far away back then. My phone buzzed. Ethan. How did it go? I smiled as I typed back. Better than I ever imagined. Thank you for everything. You did the hard part, he replied. I just pointed at the door. We talked later that night. About nothing important and everything that mattered. His work in Atlanta. My plans to finally expand my landscape design business without apologizing for it. There was no pressure, no promises, no rushing. Just ease. Respect. Space. A few weeks later, Brandon pleaded guilty. Probation. Restitution. A felony record that followed him everywhere. Vanessa vanished the moment consequences appeared, leaving him alone with the mess he created. His parents retreated into denial. Friends stopped calling. His world collapsed exactly the way he had tried to collapse mine. 6 months later, my life looks nothing like it used to. My business is thriving. My circle is smaller, but real. My home is peaceful. And for the first time, I trust myself again. Looking back, I understand something now that took me years to learn. The moment he tried to humiliate me into silence wasn't my breaking point. It was my beginning.